Hi, and welcome to Computer Applications for Architectural Design. Today we're going to look at paneling tools and how to use it as a way to adjust surfaces and facets within a surface. So I've done a few demos here, and we'll go through these sort of one at a time in more depth. But let's take a start by looking at the basic paneling tool facility, which is creating a grid on a surface and then populating that grid with a module. So some of those become preloaded, or you can create your own unique one. In this case, I created a unique module that was mapped onto this surface. You could do this also with preloaded patterns such as boxes, hexagons, triangles, and the like. And you could generate edges as well as generating faces. In this case, this is the original here. Now you can also offset those edges to create some depth or some scaffolding. And as you can panel 2D things, you can also panel three-dimensional material. So for example, here are some preloaded, these are pyramids, these are triangles, and then these are boxes. These come preloaded. And then this is a custom module here, which populated across my surface. You can also have variable sort of changes. So in this case, I have two modules, 1 and 2, and they are being populated based on this curve here. So this is an example of using paneling tools to create different proximities, or to have its surfaces or facades sort of respond to an external factor, such as a curve attractor. Okay, so we're going to do a series of videos and sort of go in depth with more of each of these. Let's begin with the simplest one here. Why don't we just take a simple surface? So in this case, I'm going to use a circle, and let's do a vertical. All right, and then we can just sort of extrude this. Let's make it a little more interesting than that. Let's extrude along a curve here. So I'll make sure my project is on. Okay. Yeah. All right. And maybe we can sort of scale this down a little bit. All right. So now we just do a sweep. Rail. Cross section. Sweep. Great. Let's do looks good. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the paneling tools drop-down bar, and we're going to find create a paneling grid. Now here, there's a variety of ways of creating paneling grids. You can experiment with these. Since I already have a surface, I'm just going to go down and look at the ones that have a surface as a prefix. So domain number versus domain length simply denotes the same as like a divide curve. So do you want to make divisions based on a total number like 20 or 15, or would you prefer it to be like a measurement such as feet, like every 8 feet you make a paneling point, or whatever. So you should also keep in mind, if it does a length, you might have the last one be a remainder, meaning it will be uneven. So let's do a number. Now here, so U and V refer to, in a similar way to X and Y, but they basically refer to the domain along the surface. So U travels in one direction, and V is sort of the minor axis, similar to X and Y. So here, why don't we set our number? Why don't we do, let's do 15. And let's try 7. So we can see the point grid moving, and we can change these numbers. For example, this can move to 10, and we'll get a tighter packet. And if we want to group, yes, we do want to group them, and so we hit OK. Great, and so it automatically creates a group, and that group is not a layer yet, but it will be. So when we go through these, you'll begin to create layers here that you can control automatically. So let's create our group, and now let's go to paneling tools again. And since we've already made our grid, now we can look at paneling from grid. So here, the drop-down menu says paneling a 2D grid. This is the preloaded ones, so let's take a look at this. So let's do panel 2D. So you can either include or not include the surface. In this case, we're going to, and the pattern here can vary. So there's box, there's a triangle, there's a diamond, and there's a hexagon. And if you don't like the spacing of these, you can change them based on how densely packed the UVs are. So you can create a new paneling grid to change it. So in this case, why don't we just do I don't know, let's do a diamond. That's okay. And there's a variety of other bits up here. So the shape, whether it's pulling from an ISO curve, or if it's straight, or if it's the shortest path, or it's projected. So this happens to be how it draws the curve. So is it on the surface, or does it find the closest path? You can determine this, sort of experiment with how they work. So when you're looking at them, you can check, and you can see that it sort of bends around it. So if I do an ISO curve, it should stick on the surface better. Okay. Add an edge. So this means it's going to have an edge. Say yes. Whether or not you want borders, I'm saying no here. If I say faces, it's going to fill in all the holes. So I can say sure. And whether or not you want to be flat or not, we'll say flat, sure. Best fit. Tangent to the center. Let's do tangent to the center. And then whether or not you want to create a mesh. So all these are eventually going to be grouped here, so you can just sort of choose them if you want. And whether or not you want to name them. So this is going to be PT17. So let's hit enter. And there we go. So we saw it created a layer with those elements on it. And it has created our paneling grid. So just to go one step further, so I can grab the curves. Notice that here it's curves. You might want to change. So here, for example, if I turn off my edges and I hide this, let's take a look at what we're looking at. Okay, so PF means faces, paneling faces, and E refers to edges. So that's what it created. Let's see if we can do something interesting here. So if I grab my edges and I go to paneling tools, I can also manipulate edges. For example, I can extrude them, I can offset them, or I can finish them. So why don't we just do, or fin edges. So why don't we do offset edges here? And the base surface normal. Let's show, okay. Pull this back up. All right, let's do that one more time. So again, we're in the third drop-down box here where we're looking for paneling utility. And you could play around with sort of what these look like here. But why don't we extrude our edges, or sorry, offset our edges. So we're going to do that group. We're going to do it. Okay. That's the one it's going to be normal to. And then it's going to give you a chance to enter in a distance. So it's sort of tricky. You have to sort of roll in here. So distance method, fixed, so a mean curvature or a Gaussian curvature. So these will change based on the curvature of the surface. So I'll do a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 5. And attract method away, connect, yes. Okay. Yeah. There we go. So now it's created a thing. Um, right, and so then you can simply pipe these to give them dimension. Let's do, let's give them a 0.5. And then it's going to basically, hopefully, it's not too big. Yeah, okay, so then there's some idea of like a sort of a structure around this thing. And then you can go back in and fill out the different panels if you need to. So that's the introduction to paneling tools, and stay tuned for future demos going through the paneling tools in more depth.